Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat Podcast. Of course, in this edition, we'll be talking about everything Tottenham Hotspur and the summer transfer window. Of course, the season has just finished, but the summer transfer window has started for Spurs already. Timo Werner, it has just been confirmed that we will be loaning him again from RB Leipzig with an option to buy. So he will be a Spurs player officially for the 2024-2025 season. Now, we are live on YouTube, live on X and on Facebook. So please do let me know where you are watching from and how you are feeling as a Spurs fan right now and how you are feeling ahead of the summer transfer window. As per usual, I've got three very special guests with me. We've got channel regular Craig Dearman back with us. Craig, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all good. Yeah, saw a trophy lift on Sunday, which was all good. I was at the under-21s game, as you well know, because I saw you there. Yeah, lovely to see us actually win something. Really pleased for the boys. I mean, actually got into the under-21s a bit more this season, been to a couple of games and followed their results a bit more closely. We got a good crop of youngsters coming through there, so I'm quite, positive about the future if Ange obviously decides to give them a shot, so to speak, which we hopefully will do, being in Europe this year. But yeah, not too bad. Looking forward to the transfer window actually, and also this show, because get one signing over the line already, so that's good.
I only asked how you were.
Sorry. I'm good. I'm all right.
He's mentioning trophies in the first minute of the podcast. I absolutely love it. I love it.
Carried away.
Back with us is season ticket holder and channel regular Matt Jones. Matt, it's been a long time. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, Chris. I'm good. And yeah, glad to be back on and looking forward to kind of getting into potential business throughout summer. So yeah, thanks for having me back on.
Lovely to have you here. And also season ticket holder and regular Becky Day. Becky, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Good to be back. Not missing the football too much yet. My eldest is doing his GCSE, so he's properly in revision mode. He's got 2 weeks left. He finishes the day that the Euros start, so we're kind of looking forward to that, really. That's kind of the mountain that we're getting over. But yeah, I'm good. Those who can see me, I've literally just finished Zumba, so I look like a big, pink mess, but it'll fade. But yeah, great to be back.
Becky, let's start the show with you because I'll be honest, I've got all these notes written down for this show. And then, of course, 20 minutes or so ago, Tottenham Hotspur have officially announced the signing of Timo Werner on loan with an option to buy. So he will officially be a Spurs player next season. Let's get your thoughts ahead of him signing, because were you happy with what you saw at the end of last season? Of course, he signed in the January window. It seemed like a very clever signing, but are you happy that he's going to be playing for Spurs again?
I think it was a tricky one, wasn't it? I've said before on this show, my only real knowledge of him was being quite decent at Leipzig and then felt reasonably poor at Chelsea. So I had kind of mixed feelings as to how he would be when he arrived. And I really liked him. I really liked his temperament. I think he's very much kind of an Ange player. He's a bit of a utility player. I think the intention from him when he started in January was to come on as a rotation for Son. And then, of course, Son went to Asia, and then Richarlison was injured, so Son had to move to the middle, and then Werner got injured. So his kind of the way they wanted to utilize Werner changed quite a bit. I did suspect he was going to stay in some guys because he seemed to be involved in quite a lot of the media before he got injured. He was, a lot of the sort of stuff that they put out on TikTok and stuff he was involved in. And so I wasn't surprised. I think it's quite a sensible thing to loan him because I think he's on quite high wages, and obviously having to kind of buy him and then pay his wages, there would have been a negotiation there. So I don't think it's a massive problem having him on loan. I noticed it midway this afternoon, and some people were kind of losing their minds over it because they feel that it will either push out some of the youngsters that are coming through, or they feel that will be our left winger. That's it, and we're done signing someone on the left. And I'm not sure that's necessarily true. I think it's, like I said, it's an option to play with Son, and he's got experience in Europe. So I don't think it's a bad signing. I'd like to think we've got better and more to come. But I think to get it done and out of the way, I don't think it's necessarily a really negative thing at all.
Well, as I say, Spurs have announced the deal. Fabrizio Romano stated that Spurs will cover Timo Werner's salary. They will also have a 15 to 16 million euro buy option clause to sign Timo Werner in June 2025. Football.London have just stated the deal to sign Timo Werner permanently will cost Spurs around £8.5 million. in the summer of 2025. That is the equivalent of 10 million euros. And to answer your question, Becky, Fabrizio Romano has just literally put out, Tottenham will still look into new signings up front for Ange Postecoglou after Timo Werner deal. Spurs are considering wingers and centre strikers in case of good opportunities, with several players still expected to leave Tottenham Hotspur. Bryan Gil could be sold this summer. Craig, let's get your thoughts ahead of the Timo Werner deal, because I must say, and I've said this on this channel many times as well on the podcast, that I'm a big Timo Werner fan. I think he works extremely hard, but I changed my mind on him during that Newcastle game that we lost so terribly up at St James's Park, when he missed a couple of sitters, if you like, for a better word. It worries me about the finishing with him. I know the fact that, you know, he could be a good squad player. You know, he's got good experience in Europe. I try and weigh up the pros and cons, but, you know, I just felt that perhaps we could have done a little bit better in the window. I suppose we will all judge it as Spurs fans at the end of the window, because you've got to give the club credit again, and Ange Postecoglou credit, because he wants business done early. This is certainly early. I did not expect to be talking about transfers, you know, certainly players coming in and, you know, players getting over the line in May.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the bottom line, I've asked myself this question. We have had this conversation a few weeks ago, didn't we, on the podcast about Werner. Bottom line for me is, if Ange wants him, then I'm happy. And I think that's basically my answer. Personal opinion on Werner, as I've said on here many times, I love players with pace. You can't mark pace. His stats were pretty good for assists. Yes, we all know he's got some issues in front of goal, and I hope that is obviously sorted out next season. But I don't think he's going to be a starting player. I think he's going to be a rotational player and used in cups and perhaps Europe. But he's obviously a Premier League proven player to come in the event of injuries as well, because Son's going to be starting in that left wing berth, you would think. But for me, I think it's a sensible signing. It's not costing us a fortune. Obviously, his wages are an issue, but for me, you can only judge it at the end of the transfer window. So if we've got other wingers in, if we've got centre forwards in, I haven't got a problem with Werner at all. He's obviously well liked around the place. As Becky said, seems to have a very good attitude. And for me, would you rather Werner than Bryan Gil? Yes. I think Gil's going to be on the way out, as we said as well. I know it's going to totally split the fan base. I can see the comments coming in. You know, Werner's not the answer, and some people saying it is a sensible signing. So this is going to split the fan base either way. No right or wrong answer. It is totally mixed, and I totally get that. Yeah. Go on, Chris. No,
I was just going to say that, but from what I've seen online so far, the opinion is very mixed. I've seen a lot of people say, what a fantastic signing, what a clever signing, all of those things. But then I've seen a lot of people saying that, you know, a signing like this lacks ambition and we expected a lot more. I can see it from both points of view. But as I said earlier, and as you've just rightly said, I think we all need to judge the window at the end. You know, playing in Europe, you virtually need two teams, don't you, Craig?
You do, yeah. And I'll come back to what I say. That's probably how he's going to be used unless there's an injury. I still don't. I mean, none of us know what his front three is going to look like come the first game of the season, or even, you know, when's the transfer window shut, 2nd of September, something like that. So we don't know what he, you know, is he going to change that front three completely? We don't know. Obviously, Son, you would imagine, is going to be in there and the first choice, but you know, Richarlison might be dropped down the pecking order if we get a centre forward in. Kulusevski and Johnson, you could argue that we could do better than those two, and I don't mean that disparagingly to them, but I think there's definitely improvements made there. I think Johnson, you need to give him a bit of time. I think, as I've said before, I think Johnson was only brought in as a squad player initially to help him learn the role, learn Ange's system, but be there, you know, for a backup almost sometimes, or cup games, and he was thrown into it. And Johnson's stats, I know he's not everybody's cup of tea either, but Johnson's stats weren't that bad either. So the most important thing for me, though, Chris, is I want other signings on top of this one. And as Fabrizio Romano said, I think we're going to see a hell of a lot of players go out the door this summer by the sound of it. I think we could even see more go out than come in, which is not a bad thing as long as Ange gets the squad size that he wants. So, yeah, not a bad start, though, in my opinion.
Matt, let's come to you. Before I get your thoughts on the signing of Timo Werner, I just want to give you some stats on him in a Spurs shirt last season. Played 13 games in the Premier League for us, 10 started, 1 in the FA Cup. Minutes played 814, goals scored 2, assists 3, shot accuracy 62%, shots 29, inside the box 24, outside the box 5, only 7 on target, passing accuracy 80.8%, successful passes 261, chances created 15, successful crosses only 7, cross accuracy only 25%. Dribble success 50%, tackles won 57.1%, duels won 41.7%, and aerial duels won 33.3%. He received 1 yellow card. Now, overall in the Premier League, this is Tottenham and Chelsea. He's played 69 games in the Premier League, 12 goals, 12 assists. That is 1 with his head, 9 with his right foot, 2 with his left foot. Shot accuracy overall in the Premier League, only 36%. And big chances missed, 28. Matt, what I really wanted to ask and why I put these stats together is that do you think that Ange Postecoglou can get the very best out of Timo Werner? Because he must believe so if he's going to give him a chance for next season.
He must do. Yeah, otherwise he wouldn't be bringing him in. I think I agree with Becky and what Craig had to say. I think for me, the bottom line, as you said, Craig, is Ange wants this deal. He wants to bring him in. He's rubber stamped it. And, you know, it has to be other signings on top of it, Chris. I think that's the important thing here. I think Son obviously has been out of position for most of last season. And I would see Werner's more cover for Son on the left. And it kind of, I was weighing, like you, Chris, pros and cons, because for him, there's not enough goals from Werner. And he's not clinical. They're a big issue. And I was there, like you, at Newcastle. And that was kind of, for me, a key point in the game at 0-0. Because, you know, taking the lead, missed a couple of sitters at that point, and that's what concerns me with him. But you know, it's sensible business in that there's not a large fee to pay out. It provides cover. We're back in Europe next season, and yeah, I think he does have experience. I mean, you look at his stats when he was at Leipzig the first time round, different league, I know, but I think it was for him it was near 120, 130 appearances. I think he scored something like 75 goals, something like that. So you would think Ange believes he can get an improved tune out of him next season for sure. And I think, as you said, Becky, I would agree with you. He fits the Ange system, that's for sure. And he's got pace to burn. But it is a real concern in terms of that final third, that accuracy and being able to be clinical. And I think that's where there needs to be work with him. And I suppose the real concern aligned to that is the fact he's 28, I think. So how much more will he improve at that point? So, you know, it's low risk, brings in cover. And I think in terms of his experience, obviously it's a lot more than Brian Hill, for example, you know, and he'll be moved on. So it kind of plugs that gap. So it makes sense, gives him a year to show what he can do a full season, and then take a view at the end of next season.
I want to ask you all this question, Matt. Let me start with you. What do you actually expect? What are your expectations for this transfer window? Because, as Craig said, and I completely agree, I expect a lot of players to go out the door. But in terms of real quality to come in the door, of course, you know, the first summer window under Ange, I thought was a really decent window. Are you expecting the same again?
Absolutely. You know, if you don't improve, you stand still, don't you? And in terms of my expectations, you know, we need a striker. We all know that. We're crying out for a big physical number 9, I think. Give us something different to Richarlison. I would want to keep him as well, by the way, in terms of depth. We need a number 6. We need a real kind of enforcer in that defensive midfield area to protect the back line. I think last season, the midfield we lost a lot of midfield battles. And I think that's an important hole to plug. And then there's other areas I think we need to strengthen. You know, with Sessignon, obviously, we'll be moving on. I think we need cover for Dogi, a left back. Potentially right back as well. So yeah, I would expect at least 4 or 5 to come in, Chris. But in terms of outgoings, I mean, the list be quite sizable, I think. It's whether we can move certain players on as well. That's going to be a challenge. But yeah, I think they've got to build on what they did last summer. Try and get the business done early. That's really important. Not leaving it till late August. But for me, the priority has to be a striker and a number 6.
Becky, let's get your thoughts on your expectations in the window. And I just want to pick up on a point that Matt mentioned there about Richarlison. Matt wants Richarlison to stay. Now, Ange has said constantly over the last couple of months that there is so much growth in that final third, which we have all seen. We've probably not scored enough goals this season that we should have done. A lot of people could go back to the Harry Kane Sal in that regard, but there is so much growth in that final third. If we are to grow in that final third and score more goals, create more opportunities, surely something has to change in that final third. So would you like to see Richarlison stay? Because a Brazilian agent apparently spoke to Richarlison's agent and said, he wants to stay. Richarlison wants to stay at Spurs.
Yeah, I think there was some idea, wasn't it, that he possibly was going to move on, and there was like a Saudi bid or there's something around that. And then for him to come out and say, he talks to the Brazilian kind of ESPN, doesn't he, quite frequently? And if to them to kind of squash that, then I don't think he's going. I think it depends on people like Vilis. Is he going to come back, or is he going to go out on loan again? Or are we getting another number 9 so that it would be Richarlison and that person that would be in the role? It depends if Richarlison is going to be the main striker or if someone else is coming in and Richarlison is going to be the backup. I think that's the bit that we don't know. I'm excited about transfer window. It's interesting that I think this time last year we'd already signed Vicario, which it's like you said about getting it done early. I think it's really important that we get it sorted. But in terms of people that I've said on this show before, I would like more homegrown players. I think the rumours about Gallagher and some of the defenders that we've been linked to from Bournemouth and Fulham and that sort of thing, it's kind of it's that side of it as well. But yeah, in answer your question about the kind of the front three, I think we know that Son needs to be a kind of rotation player and there needs to be strength in depth for him. Is there going to be is it Kulusevski and Johnson? Are they sort of sharing that role? Is there going to be somebody for Richarlison? And then I agree with Matt, we need a kind of defensive midfielder. There seems to be this rumour that Højbjerg is definitely going to move on. I agree with what you just said then about the fullbacks. We need Udogie and we need Royal. We need replacements for Porro. So therefore, if Royal leaves, you've got replacement for Porro. So it's that kind of idea, because that's where, although weirdly, the first half of the season, the second half of the season in points were actually very similar. It didn't feel like it. It felt like the second half of the season, there was a massive kind of tail off. And it's because we had injuries in those positions and we had Davis playing that position, we had Royal playing that position. So I think there is maybe 5 or 6 positions that we do need strengthening. It's really exciting to kind of know who they would be. Again, this is what we were saying about Werner. People are sort of disappointed with Werner because they don't think he's a good finisher. But Ange knows him and he obviously feels that he's something he can work with. It's that idea that, is it going to be somebody that we're going to know from the Premier League, or is it going to be somebody completely unknown? And, Mickey van der Ven this season and Udogie, they've just had such fantastic seasons that I don't think it necessarily doesn't matter if we don't know who they are and where they've come from. So I'm just looking forward to it being, I know it's that kind of old cliche, who Ange wants and how it's going to work and this sort of process and looking at the data and all of that side of it. But I do think also the outgoings are going to be a lot trickier than people maybe anticipate. If we're looking at kind of like 11, 12, 13, I think quite a lot of those will end up being loans, because unless they take a massive cut on transfer fees or wages, contracts, it's going to be quite difficult to shift that many players. So that will be interesting to see what happens as well.
Are you feeling pretty confident though, Becky, that Ange is going to offload the players that he wants to and bring exactly what he wants in?
I hope so. I think we kind of, with the introduction of sort of more towards the end of the season and Divine and Phillips coming back and the players that we've got coming back on loan, he is starting kind of to mould and understand who he wants. And this idea that he doesn't play young players, I think, isn't true. There are players that he's sort of trying in different positions. There's talk about Parrott. What happens with Parrott when he comes back from loan? There's so many players. We've got Bergvall. We've got Luke. Is it the player who's currently in Poland? I've forgotten his name. There's so many kind of movement. That's aside from your Hills and your Sessegnons and your Højbjergs and Basuma possibly and Royal and what happens. There is just so much. I think I agree with what you said. Getting Werner done shows that they are thinking about it soon, and I think it's just going to be this constant kind of drip feed, I think, all summer.
Craig, what are your expectations for this summer window?
Vuskovic, I think, Becky, was the name you were thinking of, Luka Vuskovic. What's my expectations? Basically what I said, I want to see players go out that we've all discussed in here that we think need to leave. I think we're almost all on the same ballpark for the same playing field with that. I just want to see us strengthen in all the key areas that we know we need strengthening in. It's the same conversation we've had before. It's a proper number 9 for me. You asked if Richarlison should leave. The trouble is, if Richarlison leaves, you need to bring in 2 centre forwards. Now, I've never said that Richarlison's the answer. He's not a bad player, but I don't think he's the answer. I don't think he should be our first choice number 9. But unless you're going to be bringing back Valise and think he's the answer, I don't think he is. I think he would go out on loan again, unless you're promoting Lancashire or somebody like that from the under-21s. I'm not sure what else you would do. So centre forward is a massive priority for me. Another winger. We all said, I've said on here, Elise, I think would be a brilliant signing. Eze, even though he's not a winger as such, but another attacking midfielder. I know I'm getting carried away with names here, but these are the sort of players I think we should be looking at and try, having conversations about at least. The centre back, Vuskovic, apparently is coming in January. Now, whether he goes straight into the starting or the squad, or whether he goes to the under-21s, or whether he goes out on loan again, who knows? He's a big old unit. I think physically he could come to the Premier League, but obviously that's a big ask for I don't know how old he'll be, 17, 18 by then. So it's a big ask. And what's going to happen with Ashley Phillips? And Ange has already said he wants another centre-back, but he's obviously got Phillips coming back. He's going to have a look at, you would imagine, unless he's already made his mind up about him. And then, as I said, Vuskovic later on in the year, halfway through the season. So a lot of holes to be plugged. But for me, holding midfielder, number 6, monster number 6 is imperative. Centre forward's imperative, and at least 2 more forward-thinking players as well. Possibly cover at left back as well if Sessegnon's going. So 5 or 6 players there. For me, I think we really need to look at getting in. And obviously, with Emerson Royale going, or if he goes, I think it sounds like he's going to be going. Do we have to look, as Becky said, do we need to look at bringing somebody in at right back? And obviously Brandon Austin signed another contract today up until 2029. So they obviously view him perhaps as is going to be number 2 going forward. So that might have covered that area with the goalkeeper that we've talked about before. So what is that, 6 or 7 players? Will we get them all in one window? Not sure.
Craig, when you mention all those players, it still seems like there is so much work to do.
I think there is. I don't think we can gloss over it. I think we are half a team away, first starting 11 team away from even looking to push for 2nd, 3rd or 4th. But it is that part, I believe, is doable in one window, but we have to recruit wisely. I have to say, I think we've recruited pretty well over the last few seasons since Paratici's been in charge. Or certainly been hanging around. So, but you can't fix it all in one window. Look what happened with Forest. I know we're talking about perhaps different levels, but they brought in 11, 12 players in a transfer window, and it absolutely ruined them. So you can't do that for the continuity and consistency. 5 or 6 players in a window. Do you remember when Spence signed? They revealed him the sixth Spence. So he was the 6th sign of the window, and we thought what a brilliant window that was. And and obviously Spence didn't work out, did he? And he was the one like we'd heard of. And as Becky said, Van der Ven, the doggy. How many of us had heard of those players before they came to Tottenham? I hadn't. So they haven't got to be world-class names, but they just need to be the players that fit Ange's system and the players Ange wants. And what we're led to believe, Ange does get the say in the transfers, and he says, I want X player, go and get him. So if Ange wants him, I'm happy with that.
Craig, I'm going to stick with you for a second because, as you mentioned earlier on in the show, on Sunday we witnessed a trophy being lifted at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. The under-21s winning the Premier League 2 title, and of course beating Sunderland 3-1 in the playoff final as well. So they lifted actually 2 trophies, 2 for the price of 1. Did anyone take your fancy that day, and who do you fancy to go into? Perhaps the starting 11 or even on the sub bench next season under Ange, because the under-21s, it's fair to say they have been on fire all season. Wayne Burnett has done a fantastic job, and remember 12 months ago the Spurs under-21 side were meant to be relegated, and then they reformatted the leagues, and then they've ended up winning the league, getting to a Premier League cup final as well, which we sadly lost 4-0 against Fulham. But the under-21s have been in fine form. But who took your eye on Sunday?
Yeah, magnificent achievement, and it's absolutely phenomenal. Most of the squad, to be honest, looked pretty good. I mean, but for me, Lancashire stands out. I thought he was really good on Sunday. He had a rough first half. I don't know if anybody's watched the game or seen the highlights. He got kicked to bits in that first half. And where they'd had the rugby on the day before, they'd obviously either painted over the badge in the middle of the pitch, and he got felled right in the middle of that, and he rolled around, and his whole back of his pure white kit was just covered in paint from the grass and everything, which, it did look like he'd been in a war, but he got back up and he got on with it, and he played really well. I actually thought Niall John played really well at right back. He had a good game. The goalkeeper, Gunter, was it? Yeah, really good performance. He made some really good saves. Captain Abbott, George Abbott, is it? I thought he was very good. Santiago was very good. He's something a bit different as well. So I'd love to see something like Alex Ferguson did at Manchester United when Beckham, Giggs, Scholes, but and Neville's come through, the famous Alan Hansen thing, you can't win anything with kids, and these 6 kids come through the academy. I think those days are gone, sadly, but I think our academy is looking very, very strong, but it is a huge jump up to the Premier League. I just want to see the boys get a chance, perhaps in, Europa League game or something like that, he might blood them and see how we get on, because that's how Harry Kane started, wasn't it? In that purple kit away at, can't remember where it was now, but I remember him scoring.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, good memory. Yeah. And Andros Townsend was playing in that game. I think he assisted, or was it Danny Rose assisted him? But yeah, and I remember thinking, who is Harry Kane? Well, rest is history, isn't it?
Matt, let's come on to you. Of course, we will find out our Europa League opponents on the 30th of August. Looking forward to that, and looking forward to the club being back in Europe. Matt, just wanted to get your opinion on Postecoglou. Becky mentioned this briefly earlier. Postecoglou using a lot of the under-21 development players for next year. Do you think they will get more of an opportunity? Certainly now we are playing in the Europa League, and hopefully we will go a lot further next year in the FA Cup and the League Cup.
Yeah, fingers crossed, Chris. I mean, I really hope so. I was thinking about this today, and obviously being back in Europe gives the extra games. And we were talking before we went live, obviously some of the academy players that are coming through, some real prospects in there. But it is getting a balance, because we want to obviously start going deep in some of these competitions. So yeah, it's getting a balance. I'd like to see them get some opportunities, but it needs to be mixed with a bit of experience. Obviously, we can't kind of flood them in one go. But I think Ange is obviously keeping an eye on it, which is great. And there's some good players coming through there, as we know, and Donnelly especially.
Sorry, Jamie, I forgot you. Sorry, I knew there was somebody I forgot, and Tyrese Hall as well. Honestly, they're all fantastic.
So many of them, and
I forgot you. Sorry.
But it's nurturing them, isn't it? And just making sure they're given the right opportunities at the right time. And if we get ourselves in a strong position in certain games, get them on, get them some game time. But yeah, I think they will. Yeah, I think they will get some opportunities. We started to see some of that last season. I think some of that was probably signalling to the board as well. There was some tactics there with Ange, but I do think he's obviously trying to get them in and around the first. And we've seen a lot of them, haven't we, last season, in and around amongst it on training and match days. So that can only be a good thing. And we all want to see it. We want to see academy players coming through. We haven't seen it for for a long time now. There's been a few, but like you were saying, Craig, with Kane, you want to see that happen again. We've got a real connection with the club and gone through the ranks. So I think Ange will be giving them an opportunity for sure.
Matt, if some of these players, I was going to say, if some of these players don't get given first team opportunities next year, how does Ange Postecoglou manage that situation? Is it best that some of these players do go out on loan or stay within the under-21 squad?
I think it's a mix. I think you need to loan them, try and get them kind of playing at more kind of a higher level, championship for sure, getting them into that level. So I think loans can work. I mean, you just look at our loan list at the moment. We were talking about the business coming up. I think one of the biggest challenges we've got is outgoings. There's such a long list, and it's not easy to move players on. And I'm sure we'll get into that shortly. But for me, I think if you can get the right loan deals for them, we've seen Ashley Phillips obviously this season. Alfie Devine's done well when he's been out on loan. Let's not forget Troy Parrott. He's obviously been out in Holland, hasn't he? So it can work. But it comes a time then, once they've had that experience under their belt, we've got to make a call on them as we go forward. But, playing the game and getting game time out at, championship level, whatever, it's got to be a good thing for them. Yeah.
Becky, let's come to you. Is there anyone in particular that you would like to see given an opportunity under Ange next season, particularly now we are playing in Europe? Who's taken your eye in under 21s? Because it's worth mentioning Mikey Moore as well, another fantastic goal for the under 17s for England last night.
Yeah, and I think because he spent that 2 weeks, didn't he, towards the end of the season with the first team, and he actually missed out on being involved in the under 21 cup and getting near the kind of the match on Sunday, because obviously he's away with England as well because he was with the first team. So it was really nice seeing him come on at Sheffield United, and he came on at City as well, didn't he? And I think he's so far had a great tournament in the under 17s. He's like the leading goal scorer of the whole tournament, but it's what, I agree with what you just listened to everyone was saying. It's about how it's utilised, because I know I said on about Valise. Valise has gone to Seville and has got caught up in something there and hasn't played very much. And I thought when he played for Spurs, he looked really strong and really hungry, and then that hasn't quite worked out. So it's where the loans are and how the loans work. I know Phillips and Devine were used quite a bit at Plymouth. Then they weren't, and then they were. And again, it's. I can remember when Skip went to Norwich and he had such a great season at Norwich, didn't he? And it's kind of utilising those loans, but I think also the balance of keeping them and kind of integrating them in, like we've just said there. And I agree with Craig. Pretty much every person that played certainly in the match on Sunday was outstanding. And in like Lancashire, he's absolutely massive. His whole kind of like physicality is so good for his age, and more. And you just think they look ready, but it's whether they are ready and they can make that step up to the Premier League. And I think it's that tricky one, isn't it? You want them involved in the cups, but we got knocked out of the League Cup so early last year, and then the FA Cup, which we had a strong team against City. And then, you want to put them in European games, but it's a big risk. So I like the fact that they're part of the match day squad. And, if you remember to the early season when we went in those 10 games unbeaten, we talked a lot about Højbjerg coming on to just kind of see the games through. And it's quite nice. That's why it was nice at Sheffield United. They were brought on, I think, on like 70 minutes to just sort of, the game was done. And it would be lovely if we can utilise them in that way, without them having a huge pressure of a mistake or something, and then we don't see them and they go off on loan in January. And I think I agree with what you're saying. You kind of want them to be ready. You just want it to be the right step up. And again, if the loans, we don't seem to get loaned to Premier League teams much, and most of them tend to go to Championship. So be interesting if that's an option as well. I don't know. A lot of the Premier League clubs have no money, do they? So it's sort of how that's kind of utilised. They're not going to be able to sign as many players, so they're going to want more players on loan. It could be that we utilise it that way.
Becky, with the European games and Europa League next year, I suppose it is very difficult for Ange, because if he makes a lot of changes and he puts a lot of the young players in, or even the fringe players, he will get heavily criticised, like he did, the Fulham game. 10 changes. But I'm always a great believer of just get the job done first and then bring on, a number of youth players. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think now that since COVID they can have 10 subs, that massively helps, because that was what was really interesting in watching the under-21s, is that they only had 5 subs, and it's kind of like when you've got 10 subs, there's no harm with them being on the bench. And And this is why everyone said about Werner. It's like he's a squad player. He's not going to be always starting on the left wing. So we want there to be the strength and depth on the bench. And certainly, if you can utilise the younger players in that way, then that's great as well. But yeah, certainly, I think their confidence is great. It's just kind of, like I said, that kind of ability to step up. But I do think kind of having them, you can see now, even with the women, you can see the whole kind of structure of the club is very similar. Watching the under-21s of the last sort of 2 weeks I have, is you can see their high press and the way they play is very similar. And they seem to be able to kind of take on their man at the byline, and you can sort of see the way the club is meant, that the style of play is very similar. So you would argue that they could make that step up with the first team players sort of supporting that as well. And I think because we've got a young crop of first team players as well, that kind of whole kind of family, for want of a better word, I think is much more evident now, and everybody hopefully in the right direction, which is why those players that are kind of on the fringe do just need to be moved on.
Becky, how are you feeling ahead of a season in the Europa League? Because I said this on the podcast a week or so ago, that we've seen under various different managers, when we've been in competitions like the Europa League and the Europa Conference League, we've always been worried about the next game. We've always been worried about that next Premier League fixture. How do you think Ange will approach this competition? From everyone I spoke to, certainly last week in Australia, everyone was telling me how, Ange will want to go for absolutely everything. He will want to be, going far in every single competition. He will want a really good transfer window. Is it realistic that we're going to have a fantastic window where we can fight on all fronts in all competitions and go really strong in the Europa League? Bearing in mind what I said, that, we would have a good sub bench with a number of youngsters to get game time if the first team, if the Tottenham Stars get it done in the first place.
Yeah, it's very tricky, because I can still remember when we played, the team that manager was in prison, and I remember there was one game where I remember it was my grand's funeral, and we were at the wake, and it was on in the corner, and me and Jack were watching it with our hands in our lips like this. It was just, they've never been fun. But then you roll forward to the Champions League season, when we had to go to Marseille and get a result, and we went to Marseille and got a result. And I remember after that ghost goal against Sporting that wasn't given, turning to Jack and going, "Oh, we've got to go to Marseille and win in Marseille." And we did. So it is very hit and miss, but I think I agree with saying it's how it is then on the Sunday, and how the kind of the turnaround and the whole kind of, they've not had that this season. And I've said on here as well that I think this season, unfortunately, we've been a victim of not having enough games, when we all thought that we wouldn't have many games and it would be brilliant. There'd be loads of rest, and we had all these injuries, but also the longer we didn't play, we seemed to be worse after, when we had a big gap. Yeah. So at least these games come round quick and thick and fast. And if we do lose one, we can, there's time to turn it around quickly. And, I think those last few weeks of Ange, when he sort of was quite critical of the City game and his sort of, approach to everything, and he was really angry, saying, "Well, I want to win every game." And I was just like, well, we were very poor at Wolves twice. We were not very good at Fulham away and West Ham away and Chelsea and Newcastle. And where was it then when you were really cross that we weren't playing well? So I think that his kind of saying how he wants to go and win every game, that didn't always necessarily materialise into the way we performed. But I do like the fact that get that one out of the way, onto the next game. And I think that hopefully is something that we can cope with. The Europa League is certainly not easy. It's different this year without the Champions League teams dropping into it, but I still think it's a very difficult competition. It's better than Conference League, but then the Conference League is a bit of an unknown, and you don't always know these teams that you're going to play against. So Europe, they want to be in Europe, they want to play in Europe, they now need to show what they can do in Europe. But yeah, I would be surprised if we can be brilliant on all fronts. That's why this year Villa, for them to get fourth and to go deep in the Conference League, that's why Emery's done such a good job there. He's a few years into his process, and I think we're not there yet, but it's exciting, and it's something to really look forward to. But I think there's going to be bumps, and hopefully all the players that were injured this year are not injured next year, but then arguably the players that weren't injured this year might be injured next year. So it's Tottenham. It's always eventful.
I'm glad you're realistic about it, Becky, saying that it's not going to be easy, because I've had 3 different people, including Spurs fan and channel regular Gary Maloney, say, let's book our flights to the final. Craig, the Europa League.
I know friends who have booked the hotel. They have booked the hotel on a cancellation. I'm not one of them, but I do know people who've done that.
Yeah, I did it for the Champions League final. It worked out okay for me there, but I'm not sure about the Europa League final. Craig, how do you think Postecoglou will approach the Europa League? And of course, I think it's going to be a big season next year. I think it's going to be quite a big and a pressuring season in a way. Playing in the Premier League, of course, fans will expect us to go that bit further again, go in the right direction and see that progression and ambition from the football club. But of course, we will want to go far in Europe, because us fans love a cup.
Yeah, we do. We love one. Where is the final, by the way, Chris?
Bilbao.
In Spain, yeah.
Bilbao. Oh, okay.
Bilbao.
Okay. I would hope he's going to take it seriously. I mean, he's got to. But I'm with you. I'd love to see us get the games won and then blood the youth. But the trouble with Tottenham, as we well know this season, we don't get games won early. So that therein lies the issue if we wanted to do that. So, look, it depends who we draw in our group. And of course, it's not your standard group. It's a group of 8. You play 4 at home, 4 away. Yeah. We're going to be playing 2 games more or less a week from probably the first week in September, with the 2 international breaks in September, October. I think there's one in November as well. So that's right through to Christmas. You're pretty much getting 2 games a week. So as Becky said, I think that's great. If you do,
they go into January actually, Craig.
Oh, do they really? So it's not done before Christmas. Oh, okay, no. That's interesting. So you'll have the FA Cup 3rd round traditionally the first week of January. So yeah, with the Christmas period, probably from the 1st of September, you're going to get at least, well, you will be getting 2 games a week right up until the middle of January. Then, by the sound of it, which is mental when you factor in the international breaks as well. So the games are going to come thick and fast. I think that's really good. As Becky said, if we slip up, we get straight back on the horse in 3 or 4 days' time. I think it will be good for our momentum, because we did seem to stop, stutter, and through no fault of our own sometimes, because the Man City game, the Chelsea game, they all get rescheduled. That we had 2 weeks without a game, and other teams played, and teams above us won their games. So disjointed. And obviously with the African Cup of Nations and the Asian Cup, that didn't help us either. So it was a pretty up and down season, wasn't it? It was really quite difficult. So, but back to your question, I would think Ange Postecoglou will be taking the Europa League seriously. I think he realised what it means to the fans, as you say, these cup competitions, whether it be a domestic or European. I think the fans just crave success and crave a trophy so much. It's not going to be missed on Ange. He's going to know that, and he's going to want to deliver. I mean, if he delivers a cup for Tottenham, they'll probably put a statue of him outside. So let's be honest. It's been far too long. It's been 16 years, 17 by the time if we do get to lift a trophy. So that's just crazy. My son wasn't even a year old when we won in 2008. And I can't believe now he's doing his driving lessons in July. It's like if you'd said to me, well, the next time Tottenham lift a trophy, your son will be taking his driving lessons. I was like, what, really? God,
yeah,
it's mental when you think about it, isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah, indeed.
Matt, let's come to you. James Maddison did an interview earlier today with Michael Bridge from Sky Sports. On the interview, he said that Spurs fans need to be patient. Ange Postecoglou has taken the club in the right direction. I think that a lot of fans actually replied to this and said, we've been patient enough. But I think that he was, in fairness to him, he meant, during his time and Postecoglou's time at the football club, because of course we all know what's happened before this season. We've gone through multiple different managers. Recruitment was pretty poor, but ever since Postecoglou's been here, we've already discussed it, and I think we all agree that the recruitment's been a lot better. What do you make of that? Because like when Craig says there, he's got a son, taking his driving lesson, never seen us win a trophy. What do you make of it? And Becky said, the positivity, last season. You can see it all, but the fans, how patient can people be?
I think you can see both sides of it. With the fans and us all being fans, we're frustrated. It's been far too long, isn't it? Myself growing up, used to FA Cups and being a real good cup team, and I think it's been far too long. With Ange, I can understand where Madison's coming from. He's absolutely right. Ange is 1 year in coming up. This does take time to build this. He needs 3, 4, 5 windows behind him and be given that opportunity. However, I look back to kind of last season, reflect on it. People may feel slightly differently if it had been the other way around. We'd had that 10-game run at the end of the season, perhaps. But I remember, vividly going to Fulham away in the Carabao Cup, 9 changes that evening. I was kind of scratching my head. Why did that happen? And then obviously we went out early, and then obviously drew Man City quite early in the FA Cup and went out. So that, again, that opportunity's gone. So you think kind of next season, we're just obviously discussing Europa League. Clearly, the league is first and foremost is going to be the priority of the club. That they want to get back to Champions League football that at some point. However, the Europa League is something we must take seriously, because it's a good competition. And if you win that would obviously give you Champions League qualification. So it is another avenue back into Europe. And then there's FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. So it's going to provide lots of opportunities, and certainly for the academy players, I think. I think the Carabao Cup potentially will be the lesser priority, because there's going to be games thick and fast. But again, you look back to last season, I remember all of us discussing that, thinking it's just the league to focus on, and then obviously the cups will come later. We can really put everything into it, and it didn't work out that way. As you say, Craig, Asia Cup, we had African Cup, we had all of that, we had all the disruption. I think it was 2 or 3 periods last season where there was 2-3 weeks without games. So it's very kind of disruptive, in fairness to Ange. But you can see what he's trying to do. I just think it was just that concern towards the back end of last season with some of those results, Newcastle, especially after beating Villa 4-0. That for me was one of probably our best away performance last season. You go and win 4-0 at Villa Park.
Yeah.
And then after that, we then followed up with Fulham, didn't we? And I think one at home to Luton. And then obviously the games came with Arsenal, with Liverpool, and it all kind of unravelled, which was a real kind of shame. So you want to make sure next season we're ready to go. We brought in the necessary quality. We've got our striker. In fairness to Ange, we all forget, Kane, a couple of days before the season started, he had to deal with that. He's had a lot to deal with. We had the injuries last season, and we just need that quality and depth, and we need to get the business done early and be ready to go, because we've got to fight on a number of fronts next season, and we don't, as fans, don't be in that position where we're not prepared again and you lose another season. So yeah, I think they've really got to be pushing hard. Certainly, league goes without saying, but the Europa League and FA Cup for me are very important. Because it's not overdue.
Chris, so it made me laugh, and that's tongue in cheek. Steve Dyer makes a great point in the comments. We've actually already progressed more than last season. We're already in round 3 of the League Cup because we're in Europe. That's a great point, Steve. I love that. Positivity.
We'll be in the League Cup in September. Yeah, great.
We will.
Yeah, good point. Becky, let's come to you. As Craig mentioned earlier, Brandon Austin signed a new 5-year contract with the club until 2029. Now, of course, we've got Alfie Whiteman, Fraser Forster, Vicario, Josh Keeley, another very good goalkeeper, spent the season on loan at Barnet. Gunter, who Craig mentioned earlier, kept Spurs under 21s in the game. I'll tell you what, in that first half, made a couple of great saves. What do you make of this new contract for Brandon Austin?
I think it's a good one. I think just reading the comments, people saying there that it kind of got hidden a little bit with the Werner thing afterwards. But I think, Forster's no youngster. I think he was there as, he's very friendly, isn't he, with Sonny and Davis and people like that. I'm not sure necessarily how much longer he would be staying unless he's going into a coaching role. I could possibly see Austin being the second keeper. I don't think we're in the market to look for anybody else, because like you just said then, Luca Gunter, I thought in the quarterfinal, the game before Chelsea, he made that save right at the end as well. So there's definitely that kind of depth coming through, and the Barnet keeper's done very well on loan there. So yeah, I think it's like we alluded to before, you know, why are we always needing to go out and buy players? If we can kind of promote from within, then great. Austin seems very happy. I think it's interesting. One of my friends commented at Spurs that they never ever showed the saves from keepers. They always showed them, you know, we went for a spell of people saying that Spurs did a shoot from outside the box, and then the next like input from Spurs was loads of people shooting from outside the box, and then someone replied going, "You never see the keepers saving any." And then they started showing keepers doing saves. So, and Austin again featured quite a lot. I know I'm reading into things, but you know, I think again you saw more of Austin with Vicario. So again, I know Forster was injured, but it wasn't necessarily a surprise that he has extended. Again, is he going to do that like Scarlett did and then go on loan, or is he going to sign and he's going to stay within the club? Who knows?
Craig, let's come to you. Pedro Porro not being included in the Spain squad. Is that harsh?
Yeah, probably is. But, you know, Spain have got a pretty decent squad, haven't they? And it could just be one of those things that he had to choose 2 from 3. I must admit, I don't know much about Spanish right backs, who's got in ahead of him or what system they play. So it would be unfair of me to comment on it. But I know they've got a pretty strong squad, getting back to where they were in 2010, 2012 sort of time. So it's harsh on him. But do you know what? He's a Tottenham player, so primarily I just think about him at Tottenham, and that means he's going to get a nice long rest over the summer. So he's just going to be hopefully raring to go for the pre-season tour in Japan and Korea. But yeah, probably is harsh on him. But then again, we've seen him all season, and you know he's up there for me with one of our players of the season. So obviously Van der Ven takes that crown for me, but Porro's got to be in the top 3 for me. But yeah, probably harsh on him. He's going to be gutted, but there'll be plenty more times for him, hopefully.
Be interesting that both our wing backs aren't going, because Udogi's obviously injured for Italy as well. So there's, you know, for the two players that arguably do the most running, they'll be having a bit of a rest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Craig mentioned there about pre-season friendlies. Of course, we've got one in Japan and we've got one in South Korea. But Matt, let's come to you. Another one that Spurs only announced yesterday. Queen's Park Rangers away. I was only saying to someone the other day, I wish that they would actually do, you know, a pre-season friendly again, where we used to play the likes of Swindon or Colchester or Oxford or, you know, such like. And there it is. So we've got a good mixture of, you know, we've got QPR. We play the friendly in Japan, friendly in Korea, and then of course we come back to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, play Bayern Munich again. What do you make of this friendly against QPR, Matt?
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's good to see, isn't it? It's what it used to be, and it's moved over the years, isn't it? You know, it's about growing the fan base in other countries and so on. But yeah, I think it's good. It's certainly good to be having more local teams, regional teams we can play against in pre-season. Like you say, I remember years ago at the Enfield, even Stevenage. So yeah, I think it's good. And again, plenty of rotation. You know, it's about getting minutes in the legs, isn't it, for a lot of the players, and obviously mitigate some of the travelling for them, and certainly some of the academy players may get opportunities in those games as well. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. And Munich, I think that's going to be an interesting one. We'll be going to that. So yeah, looking forward to that as well. Yeah.
Timo Werner has just come out and said, I'm happy to be here in North London. Spurs is a really, really good place to stay at. To end the show, Becky, let's start with you. I've got 2 questions. What was your standout moment of the season and your player of the season?
Oh, crikey. My player of the season was Van der Ven. Jack's was Vicario, but that's because it's goalies union. Standout. It's interesting. It was yesterday, or might have been today. Lucas Moura scored his last goal, didn't he? Leeds away. And it came up on my socials, and I was like, oh, that was, you know, I didn't see many away wins last year. I saw more away wins this year. Like you said, Villa, Forest was great fun before Christmas. Even Sheffield United last week was fun. Burnley, first game early on in the season. So there were some great away games this season. It's very hard to pick one standout. You know, we haven't beaten Liverpool at home for a very, very long time. And with my husband being a Liverpool supporter, that was quite fun. Early on in the season, beating United at home was fun. Even the Sheffield United home game, you know, I think it's been such a crazy season where we've had so many more attacking games, and it feels like we've had so many more goals, and there's been so much more of a positive vibe around the players and everything, that it's very hard to pick one standout moment. But yeah, that's kind of my collective a lot, really.
I'm definitely going to go with Mickey van der Ven as being our player of the season, and as the supporters groups did. And I would say probably standout moments would be the atmosphere. The atmosphere completely changed last season under Postecoglou, and whenever we won at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in particular, it was like a party atmosphere, and I absolutely love that. To stand there looking at the south stand and see everyone enjoy themselves the way that they did was incredible. So I love that. I'd love to see more of that next year. Craig, what about you?
Yeah, Van der Ven, player of the season, 100%. Can't look anything past Van der Ven. Moment of the season, best moment of the season. There's been a couple, like Becky said, the Liverpool last gasp winner, the Sheffield United one at home. I think there's something about last-minute winners that, if you win 2-1 in the first 20 minutes and there's no change in the score, it's like, okay, we won the game, but there's something about last-minute winners is something special. But I have to say, for me, and it's only a personal thing, when we beat Manchester United 2-0, I was still on holiday in Corfu. And nowhere we could find was showing the game, so we was sitting around the bar in the hotel watching, all four of us on my phone, and it was only because he's so engrossed in the game. And I looked up, and there's a few other people dotted around, just glued to their phones. And I knew there was a couple of Spurs fans, because one fella remembered me telling you, recognised me from this podcast, and we'd been having a chat. But obviously, I didn't really know, which was weird in itself. You go all the way to Corfu, and somebody recognised you. But obviously, when we scored the second one, he jumped up and started screaming. And then this woman come over and she went, "Excuse me, can you keep the noise down, please? My husband's a Manchester United fan and he's very upset at the moment." And she wasn't serious. She was very tongue-in-cheek because she was laughing at the fact he was really pissed off. But I have to say that was a moment for me, beating Manchester United at home, because they usually do us over, don't they? So, yeah, it was good start of the season. That was part of it.
Well, thank you for that story, Craig. Always getting recognised.
In toilets, usually, which that's another time.
Matt, what about you?
Yeah, same as all of you in terms of player of the season, Van der Ven. But he's been incredible, really, for his first season, his age, and just seamless straight into the team. He's been brilliant. I think for me as well, closely followed. I think Romero's worth a mention. I think he really kind of, this season's matured. And I think he's been brilliant as well as Porro. But Van der Ven for me edged it for sure, being in a new league as well. So he's been excellent. And then in terms of moment of the season, I'm so torn just giving this some thought, really, because I think Villa for me was a really good performance. Villa away, obviously. I was really kind of worried about going into that game. It's just a shame what happened afterwards, obviously, following fixtures. But Villa away was up there. Liverpool, thoroughly enjoyed that because that was long overdue at home, that win. But for me, I would go with Man United at home, first home game of the season, because kind of lose to your point, Chris, with the atmosphere. I think it was such an important game for Ange as well, his first home Premier League game.
Yeah,
we were brilliant that day, 2-0, and it was rocking full time. And you think, right, yeah, we're on. That feel good factor was there right at the outset. So I think that was a really important game to kind of lay a marker down and win. I think Man United at home for me, definitely.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Tell everyone where they can find you on social media and how they can order these T-shirts.
Indeed. Feel free to give me a follow on Twitter or X as it is now, MJ_THFC, or also go across to my Instagram and you can certainly message me there for any shirt printing needs.
Well, Matt,
but thanks for having me back on, Chris.
Great to have you here. Thank you so much. We look forward to having you on again very soon. Becky, thanks so much for joining us, particularly at such short notice. I tell you what, I've got such a wonderful team of people like you three who just drop everything and come on the podcast to talk about everything Spurs, including Timo Werner's transfer. So thank you so much. Where can people find you?
I'm on X, Becky. But like I said, if you ever see me down at Spurs, I usually see Jack. I get a lot of people going, "Where's your little lad? Where's your lad?" And then if I'm in different place, "Where's your lad?" It's like, so they start spotting him as much as me now. But like I said, there's a lot on in the summer. I like a summer when we have Euros and the Olympics, and I like Wimbledon and I like cricket, and so I'm not missing Spurs too much yet because there's loads of other things on. But like I said, I do think there will be this kind of drip feed of information all summer. And then like when the fixtures come out, I'm away quite a bit in August because I'm a teacher. Those who know I'm a teacher, so I'm hoping that there's certain fixtures will be that I can kind of make, and I said to a lot of my friends it'd be kind of September before I'm back, like really properly. But yeah, looking forward. It's that same thing. Who do we get? Are we going to be away again? Are we going to get a decent home game? I think that's what we were saying about the Man United game, is that was the first home game and we didn't have Kane, and the way that we played, and we replayed so well in that game that it really felt that was going to be like a turning point the season, and things were going to be different under Ange. And I think that's really kind of that Man United game really kind of, and then to, like I said, to continue it with Liverpool, and we had some really decent home games. But yeah, thanks for having me on. Great to be on. And like I said, it's half term for me, so I can jump on quite quickly. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Becky. Appreciate it. And Craig, I'm not going to thank you. I'm going to thank your wonderful wife, Sally, because it's her birthday today and you're on this podcast.
I know. Yeah. She's a good girl. She is a good girl. But luckily, she's a big Spurs fan as well. So she knows, some things are just as important as birthdays, and that's Tottenham Hotspur. So yeah, no, it's all good. She'd been out and had a few today with her friend anyway, so she's very happy anyway. So all is well. So yeah, not a problem. Always good.
I reckon you probably wrote in the card, "Happy birthday, Sally." You got Timo Werner for another year. Is that what it was? Yeah, she's just waiting for the Emerson Royale news now, I think. To say he's leaving, but yeah, she actually told me before I'd seen it on X myself. So yeah, it wasn't a surprise really with the Werner. I agree with Becky. It kind of wasn't a surprise. I kind of could think and see that's a very Tottenham-like signing. I think we all knew that in January. I must admit, I didn't expect us to reloan him. I thought it would just either be a straight purchase. But obviously, yeah, it was very, very strange. But again, I think that's probably even better, isn't it? So yeah, I can totally see the comments this evening. Fan base is about 50-50 split on it. Some people blaming Daniel Levy. For what it's worth, I don't think this is Daniel Levy's fault or anything. I think Ange, as I said, has said he wants Werner in the squad, and they've gone and done the deal. So that's just my opinion. But if you do want to follow me, I'm on X at Dearman9. And thanks for watching. Yeah, I should have probably said that right at the start, because it was meant to be a very complicated deal, but then both clubs wanted to get the deal done very quickly. So you're right, Craig. It looked like Spurs were either going to sign him or not, not going down the route of another loan. But, RB Leipzig have got the deal done as well. So fair play to them for making it so easy and getting the deals done so quickly as well. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate your time this evening. I know it was only going to be a short one, and we've overrun yet again because we could talk about Spurs all night and day. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. And let's look forward to many more shows with many more new signings for Ange Postecoglou for the new season, playing in the Europa League. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, come on, you Spurs.